Hi. I've got a very busy time ahead of me, so for the next couple of weeks, to ensure I still get a new video out every week for my lovely viewers, I'll be doing them in this loosely scripted style I call unfiltered. And to save on editing time, I won't be using my usual chroma key and backdrops. I'm going to cover a few subjects that I tend not to talk about much because they've been covered extensively by other creators, but even so have been asked for many times by subscribers to this channel. Today's topic isn't formally part of the verbal spectrum, which will continue soon when life is a little less hectic, but it's closely related. Language is important. It doesn't matter which language you speak or write in. The words you choose, the order they're placed in, their context, and even the font used or tone of voice can make a difference to their meaning. The issue I'll be talking about today centres on the use of the English language, but its scope is international, because the autistic community is a global community, and English is the most spoken language on the planet after Mandarin Chinese. Although this issue centres on language, it's not actually a language problem. But before we get to that, we need some background to understand the problem itself. My wife and many of my friends over the years have worked in caring professions or in education. Some of them did their degrees or their vocational training back in the 1990s. Some of them are doing it now. But there's one thing all of them were taught which concerns the autistic community. They're told that they should always refer to us as people with autism and never autistic people. They're told the same about most disabilities and sensory differences too, but not uniformly. The principle is always that the person and the quality that differentiates them should be separated or minimised. So, a diabetic person becomes a person with diabetes. I myself would not be called arthritic, I'd be a person with arthritis. And I can't be called autistic, I must be referred to as a person with autism. The thought processes behind it are well intentioned. The thinking goes that if you use an adjective, it defines the person and devalues them. Whereas if you describe them as a person with, it establishes us as valid people first who happen to be impaired or different. It's known as Person First Language, or PFL. There's no doubt that it was intended to be a kind gesture, especially in an increasingly polarised world, which often seeks to marginalise people based on the most arbitrary of distinctions. It's based on an assumption, though. It assumes that we feel diminished by our differences, maybe even ashamed of them. But not everyone is. In fact, more and more people who stand out from the crowd are staking a claim to their individuality and their identity, and are quite happy, even proud, to be identified with their differences. When you use person first language to describe someone without the assumption of stigma, it sounds ridiculous. You'd look pretty foolish constantly describing millionaires as persons with wealth, saying people with homosexuality instead of gay people, or describing women as people with womanhood. When you use PFL about someone who doesn't see their difference as a problem, it can sound condescending, or even imply personal distaste. It makes us feel as if you disapprove of the qualities that you're tiptoeing around. I'm autistic, and I'm no less viable a human being than anyone else. My brain processes information slightly differently to the majority, and there's no reason to be ashamed of that. I have no problem being identified as autistic. In fact, I expect it and welcome it. If someone knows I'm autistic in advance, their reaction to me tells me whether or not they're worth my time. It also helps me to network and meet other people like myself. When I tell someone I'm autistic, I find out very quickly how their mind works. Some people act shocked. Others become embarrassed and don't know what to say. Some instantly lose interest, but most take it in their stride. It can become a talking point, an opportunity to educate people sometimes, which, for an advocate like me, is a valuable opportunity. More than anything else, though, it makes me visible. Those people know one more autistic person in their lives, and the more they know, the less of a mystery we will be. When you take away the mystery and the fear that goes with it, you reduce the stigma that all autistic people face. By owning and using the word autistic, we signal that we're not afraid of standing up to be counted. We're telling the world that autistic people are not the dysfunctional, incapable people the popular consensus would have them believe. We challenge the status quo. When someone insists on putting the person first or using euphemistic language like on the spectrum, they reinforce that status quo and are actually working against our interests, keeping us invisible. Now, I've explained why some people and institutions think that person-first language and euphemisms seem like a good idea. And I hope you now understand why an increasing majority of autistic people disagree. If you've any doubt about it, you only need look at the hundreds of surveys and polls done on the subject. Even Autism Speaks, probably the most despised of autism organisations, ran a series of polls attempting to prove the opposite point. Yet in every one, the results came back heavily in favour of autistic people preferring to be called autistic people, rather than people with autism. That majority includes autists who are non-speaking or who also have learning or intellectual disabilities too, not just those of us who actively advocate and campaign on behalf of the community. I'll include links to at least one of those polls in the description, time permitting. The reason I'm filming this video, and for the endless threads others write on social media, the blogs, the podcasts and the polls and surveys I just mentioned, is that people just don't seem to be getting the message. Calling autistic people people with autism is insulting. It's condescending. It's hurtful. And it actually does the opposite of what people who insist on doing it think it's doing. It is cementing the idea that being autistic is a bad thing we should distance ourselves from, rather than being an essential part of who we are. It's increasing stigma, not shielding us from it. Every day, but particularly during the awareness days, weeks and months that are unavoidable online and in the media, non-autistic people are telling us what we're allowed to call ourselves. And that just isn't on. They can be aggressive, insulting and downright nasty. They tell us that we're wrong, we know nothing, that it's not up to us to decide, and cite the training they had which told them they had to use PFL. Huge online battles lasting hundreds, even thousands of posts ensue between autistic people asking for our wishes to be respected and non-autistic people refusing and telling us we have no right to ask. They accuse us of being deluded or selfish and call us cruel names whilst insisting they're being respectful to us because they use PFL. It's like a sketch from a sick, twisted comedy. And they're wrong. Oh, so very wrong. It's up to the individual what we choose to call ourselves. And it's up to the majority of autistic people to decide how our community prefers to be referred to. There is no more to debate. No extenuating factors, no leeway for opinion. It's what we ask of you. And it's not exactly a big ask, is it? There are some autistic people who do prefer to be called people with autism. They have that right, and we should all respect it. There are others who hide their autism from everybody, masking permanently, living in fear of being exposed, and there are a few who hide it even from themselves, in denial of their diagnosis. It's fear of stigmatisation that causes such behaviour, though, and every non-autistic person who insists on PFL does nothing to help that stigma fade away. Nobody has the right to tell someone else how they should be referred to. nor do they have the right to deny the combined will of a majority to be described in the terms they choose. When you find out someone is autistic, you really should make the minimal effort needed to ask them how they think of themselves. Do they think of themselves as autistic or a person with autism? It's a tiny gesture of respect, but oh, so important. Once they tell you, you should stick to their preference. If you don't know their preference, or when you refer to autistic people as a community or a demographic, always call us autistic and nothing else. There's nothing you can do that is so simple yet can have such a huge impact. Thank you for watching. You can help the channel grow by picking up some of our merch, or becoming a patron of the channel on Patreon, like these lovely people here. There's links to both in the description and on autismatic.com. You can also subscribe to see more content here, or watch another Autismatic video over here.